Good afternoon, team. Brian Lip here with Sales for Life. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. Excited to have a couple great guests, and I'll introduce them in a sec. But really, we're here to talk about business development, the reality of how important data is in being smarter and being more effective. And I'm pleased today that we're going to go over basically how to create a solid foundation, what it really looks like to share insights to get smarter in the way that you personalize your outreach, and of course, leverage signals, leverage intelligence that's at our fingertips to be much more relevant in the way that we communicate. With that, I'll quickly let our couple panelists introduce themselves. Again, this is Brian Lip with Sales for Life. John, maybe you can give us a brief background about yourself.
Hey, Brian, what's going on? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, for John Barrows here. I'm a sales guy that came across some really good stuff and happened to be all right sharing it with people. I do sales training consulting for companies like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, Aptos, Okta, name the SaaS company, and having fun doing it. But still sell every day because there's just too much going on right now to get out of the game. If you do, you're going to be a dinosaur fast. So
cool. Welcome. Thanks. Ben.
Yeah, hey, great to be here. Ben Brockman with DataFox. Actually had the good fortune of coming across John a few years ago when I was doing BDR work at Salesforce, and then since then I've joined DataFox, where I lead our sales team and work with a lot of high growth sales organizations around getting the right account data in their CRMs, and then hopefully prioritizing that effectively to break into new accounts.
Great. Well, gentlemen, let's jump right into the content. We've got lots to get through. Let's have some open discussion around it. And everyone, keep in mind this is recorded, so you'll have access to it after the fact. So feel free to stay engaged and ask any questions, comments as we go through.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Brian. So really today, what we're going to drive through is really start at the foundational aspect of how best-in-class organizations think about building out their data strategy, and then ultimately where they can go with that in terms of prioritizing the right fit accounts and then breaking into them through a high degree of personalization. So what we fundamentally really see, right, is that any sales org has to answer a few big questions. What's that right fit account that you're trying to sell into, and then what are the core data points that you need to do so. One tack that we've taken here at DataFox has been very early days, ask some of our best performing reps if you're gonna have line of sight into the easiest business to close, what are those account characteristics, what do they look like, and then ideally pushing that even a little bit harder. If you're gonna find a deal that's gonna be 2x your average, what do those things look like? So there's some ways to fundamentally ask those questions, but I know that Brian's worked with a ton of sales organizations. So we'd love to kick this your way to kind of understand what you're seeing out there and how you think about that kind of target data that you need to define your ICP in the first place.
Yeah, I think this is a concept that's often overlooked. People jump into the market way too fast before defining who they should really engage with and why. And I think a lot of people need to start earlier in asking themselves, so what, who cares about this exercise? It's about them, not you. Let's really ensure we have a customer-centric, market-driven mindset, and then work backwards from there. So I've seen organizations look at some of the stuff that you have on the screen as far as firmographics, standard things around industry, size, location. Firmographics are really what businesses look at as far as what demographics are to people, right? Same kind of classification. So then when I move down to demographics, that's more attributes of people. What do they care about? What are their challenges? Where are they going? How are they measured? What are future outcomes really going to look like? And then I think about situational awareness. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity with the internet. So context into current trends of an industry, really how that's changing over time. What's digital body language look like from people so that you can be smarter in finding commonality and being relevant at the right time and with the right context. So really firmographics, demographics, and situational awareness, I think really help to ensure that you're putting the market or the customer first and then forming a go-to-market strategy behind it.
That makes sense, and I think there's definitely a lot of data providers out there that can help you do that. And I think really what we see is fundamentally understanding if you've answered that first question that Brian's getting at there, then you have the opportunity to go ahead and look at various providers in the spaces. Everybody does data very differently, and understanding really what that overlap is between that target market you're going after and the various data sets that you can go out and acquire is fundamental. And really all of these should at its core help both make a rep's job quite a bit easier. But then fundamentally, if they're not, if any data provider isn't helping, people in the C-suite, VPs of sales, marketing folks, sales ops directors, answer those hard questions of, how big is this market that we're really gearing towards, and then how big is the market that is a great fit for us. You need to be able to answer quite a few of those questions and make sure you're in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ben, actually, if you don't mind me chiming in here real quick, one of the things I also recommend, I think the company obviously needs to do that just and be as specific as possible with that intel. But I also think reps should do this for their own territories, because, if your territory is San Francisco and it's mostly tech, you don't have the same qualification criteria as somebody who's got oil and gas in Texas.
Right.
So there's different use cases, there's different technologies in play there, there's different competition. So I really recommend, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, that I think everything, one of the things I do with my trainings, like I always go around, hey, what's your biggest challenge? And, time management always comes up as one of the biggest challenges. This is the fundamental premise of time management, if you will, because not all prospects are created equal. And what you need to do is really kind of tier them out. I do a simple tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, great, average, crap. And quality, quantity, practice is the approach to those, right? The quality approach is your tier 1s, the quantity approach is your tier 2s, and practice is your tier 3s. But again, I really do fundamentally believe that every rep should really sit down in their territory and say, what does an ideal customer profile look like for me? And then marry that up. And an easy way to do this, like if you're brand new, obviously, in a company, then, or if the company's brand new, then, okay, do it for the main purposes. But if you're coming into a company that's already been around, all you got to do is look at the case studies, right? Look at those case studies. What are like, you can kind of guess, but you look at your best customers. I don't mean those from a revenue standpoint. I mean those from a, like profitability standpoint, customer service standpoint, those type of things that you want to look at as well.
For sure.
And John, on that rep basis, it sounds like you definitely guide to making it simple of effectively good, mediocre, and crap. On a per rep basis. It's as simple as that for you.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you look at all the criteria, like on your previous slide, it was, I go level 1 information and the level 2 information. Level 1 information is the basics, the demographics. So categories would be size, number of employees, industry, number of locations, that type of stuff that you can run on any data service out there. But then there's that level 2, which is the stuff you got to do a little bit more digging for, like again, competition. There are certain competitors that that you have a great story to tell against. There's certain ones that you're like, ah, damn it, if they're in there, it's almost not even worth having that conversation. Same thing with technologies. There's certain technologies that if a company is using that technology, you got a great story to have, you know what I mean? You can reach out to them. But if they're using other technologies, you're kind of like, okay, that's not great for us. Even the profile of the person that you're reaching out to. I know we're going to kind of get into the persona piece here, but even the person, like, let's as an example, if you're selling a marketing solution, okay, what's the makeup of the marketing department? Is it one generalist who's just drowning in, trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, or is it a larger department that has very specific roles at all the levels of marketing? And one could be better than the other. Your solution could be way better for that generalist who's going crazy, or it could be way better when there's a structure to it. It's like, oop, if they have that role, that means my solution's going to be great. You know what I mean? So I think it's it's not that hard. It's just really thinking through every nuance possible, because the more nuanced you can get with that qualification criteria, the more focused you can be with your sales efforts, and the higher volume you can get. And that's where we're going to get to with this presentation, is the higher volume you can get without blasting out generic template emails. Because if you go very targeted with your approach to a persona or a segment, like for me, VPs of sales, SaaS industry that use Salesforce, I can segment that out in my data, and I can come up with a campaign to all VPs of sales in the SaaS industry that use Salesforce, right? Because that value proposition in my contact strategy is different than VPs of sales in the manufacturing industry that use Microsoft Dynamics. Right? I'm going to come up with different messages for those because they have different priorities and different challenges.
Sure. And then John, to kind of piggyback on that a bit, I know, you have been long at this on making sure that, reps are using, good reasons to reach out to potential prospects. Let's kind of go down the thread of after they've already done the hard work of figuring out, who those right fit buyers are, who the good tier ones are in their specific segment. How do you think about it, and how do you train towards, using signals to effectively break into new accounts, and how do you kind of prioritize between different groups of what's the right type of reason to be reaching out to a business?
Yeah, I mean, this is all about the triggers. I mean, you said it before, or I think Brian, when you kicked it off, it's about the customer. It's not about us, right? Nobody cares about us. This is leading provider of whatever. I got a challenge for everybody watching this. Dude, go to 100 websites and find me one company that's not the leading provider of something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like all that, like nobody cares about us, and it's the number one universal truth in sales and human behavior here. It's like the number one thing people love talking about is themselves. And so that's why you look for these triggers, right? And these are all fantastic triggers. What I usually recommend is you really think through what are the 4 or 5 that you can quickly find, you know what I mean? And that you can have an impact on. And we're going to talk about efficiencies later here, but it's like, mergers and acquisitions, launching new products, opening up new offices, those type of things. Like, what are 4 or 5 of them that, like, within 2 or 3 minutes, like, if obviously if you got a tool like DataFox or something like that, it has the information, but even if you don't have any technology, that you could go on somebody's website and within literally 2 or 3 minutes go bing, 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 look for those 4 things. If they're there, fantastic. If they're not, let's move on. Because I think one of the things with social selling and people looking for these triggers is specifically related. Well, I'll say this with my training, like what happened with me when I took this training was, before I took this training, I was blasting out the typical generic emails, just doing the spray and pray approach. And then I took this training, it was, oh, do your research, whatever. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But then I started getting lost in the research. And I would start to, spend 15, 20, 30 minutes doing research on an account before I would send them an email. And that, that's obviously doesn't make any sense, because it's not about the one email, right? I mean, there's study after study that talks about how many touches it takes to get in touch with somebody these days. 5 touches, 10 touches. I literally read a report the other day that said it takes 35 touches. I'm telling you right now, you call me 35 times, I'm going to call the police on you. But the point is that I've never read a study that says 1 touch. You know what I mean? One email is the best, which proves why it doesn't make any sense to sit down and spend 30 minutes writing one or digging for the perfect reason. So that's why standardize on 4 or 5. We're going to talk about messaging as it relates to that, so we can repurpose that. But it just makes it, you all of a sudden, then you put the lens on of, I'm looking for this, and this is where that information sits, or set up tools that have that specific information, those specific triggers be, sent to you based on your target account list. Now all of a sudden you can start to crank some really high quality stuff in a pretty efficient way.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, so I think it's a good point to kind of shift gears a bit into kind of how we think about, scaling up some of these efforts. It's pretty apparent that getting in with the right messaging and like you aptly said there, John, nobody cares about you, they care about themselves. How do we kind of increase the scale of this a little bit? So, what I personally found was super interesting was that when I was working at Salesforce, if I saw a company raise some funding, I was like, oh, bingo, they raised some money. They've got to want to buy Salesforce now. And
you and every other rep on the planet.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish that was not the case, but I'm not different than every other rep on the planet. But fundamentally, then when I got to DataFox, a company that was out raising funding, the biggest aha moment that I had was that when a company announces they've raised funding, they've actually already raised that money. And so this is actually a timeline trajectory of what happened to us 2 years ago, where we closed around a funding in April, and then you basically delay that announcement, right? We had to get our ducks in a row on some product announcements, bend everything around that funding announcement to really get the biggest bang for our buck there. And in the interim, we made a bunch of hires. We moved into a new office. We started signing up HR softwares and things like this that we needed to put in place. And so a lot of these purchase decisions were being made and effectively going to the reps who had been on us for those 6 months prior to that actually happening. And then boom, July hits. We announce our funding, and we get across the team hundreds of phone calls and emails from eager reps like my former self. When in actuality, everyone here was just completely internally focused. talking to some candidates that we had in the pipeline that we wanted to break the good news to, dealing with the influx of inbound interest on the sales side. So it's this wildly fundamental disconnect between rep behavior and when is actually the right time to get in touch with us.
Right. I think of it, even though you're getting some intelligence, it doesn't mean you can't put in the good effort, right? So if you're not defining your ideal customer profiles way earlier and getting into deals much earlier, good luck, right? You're going to get commoditized. You're just going to be one of these 100 reps that are way too late in the game, but the buying committee's already shortlisted who they're going to work with and why. People have helped to challenge status quo with content. So I completely agree that these things help to track a market, to track an account, but you got to start way earlier in the process, or you're not going to be someone that's really shaping a strategy and getting into that deal early.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was gonna say this kind of hits on something I've been really focused on recently, which is just business acumen. I think finally sales is starting to get some attention here as far as education. There's still I still think you can only get your major in sales in about 15 or 20 colleges or so. But at least it's getting, but what we do is we teach skill, we teach technique, we teach structure, we teach all this stuff. But what we don't teach is just general business acumen, like understanding what happens. Like, I mean, this slide alone, hopefully the people who are on this call, like, get value out of this alone, for crying out loud. Understanding the stages of funding, understanding the stages of a merger and acquisition. It's the same thing, right? Merger and acquisition, people jump on that, but it's like, when that announcement happened, how much crap is going on right there.
Right.
So if you can make my life a lot easier right then and there, then feel free to reach out to me. But if you can't, if you're adding something else to my plate at this point, don't touch me right now. What I do is I've actually shifted on mergers and acquisitions and funding. I still use them as a reason to reach out to somebody, but it's not to talk to you. It's to let you know I'm paying attention. So as an example, I was following a couple of my clients and all of a sudden they got funding, and I would just say, hey, you know what, just saw you guys just got some funding. Congratulations. Hopefully that means something good for you personally and professionally. Here you go. You know what I mean? No expectation of, hey, I want to talk to you about it. No, let me show you how to spend that money. Just, I'm a business professional paying attention to you. You know what I mean? And I just want to let you know I'm paying attention to you. Same thing with like awards. It's like, I'm not going to reach out and say, hey, congratulations on the award. I want to sell you something. It's like, congratulations on the award, man. That's pretty cool. Like, hopefully things are going well, right? Looks like they are. Good for you. And you show that, you take almost the non-sales approach where this is where Sales for Life is perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you add value, and keep there. So when that happens, you're the one they call.
Right. So. And it's also really busy when someone's going through this kind of stuff. So they may have started to slip tracking their own competition or what else is going on. So if you can help them understand that, that's even more relevant, because then you're putting new things back on the radar that actually help that person or hurt that person, depending on the scenario.
Yep.
That's right. With with all this going on, Brian, what kind of tips, or how do you think about how to successfully blend that need to do research without without kind of overwhelming your day, just sitting there,
right? I agree with John that
never emailing. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I agree with John that too many people do get analysis paralysis and they're not acting, right? Like, you have to act. We got to take swings, but we have to be very disciplined with our time. So let's really be an essentialist. Let's really focus on the things that matter now, and then also not be afraid to say no to things that don't. Too many people are saying yes to everything within their sales team or their organization. And it just slows everything down, not only that individual and team's performance, but it can slow down everybody else. So I think really being disciplined and then batch your time is really key. So for example, just on the research side, you're checking out a Gartner Magic Quadrant. You're understanding a certain vertical or segment. So if you look at all those trends and you do that once in a solid way to understand that certain space, then you can go after those 10 or 15 companies called out in that Gartner Magic Quadrant much faster, right? The speed to market on the execution is going to improve a lot because you're putting the time into understanding macro trends, and then you've already defined your personas and ideal customer profiles. So then now how can you just really find commonality in order to start engaging people and sparking those conversations? So I then think around batching that activity itself, right? Trying to get into flow. If I make 10 phone calls rather than phone call, email, social, bounce around, you get smarter after each activity. By the time you hit that 10th phone call, you're more conversational, or by the time you work through that message in that email, again, it's been slimmed down, it's more concise, it's more relevant. You just get more productive as you go through batching your time. And then don't forget to stand up and take a break, right? Like, you can't just hit it in a high capacity, highly productive way for 3 hours. Like, no, like, you're not going to be able to do that. So go short burst of heavily focused effort, take a breather, go for a walk, and then hit it again. And you do those bursts of very focused effort, block out your colleagues, block out the stuff that is going to distract you, and your productivity can really skyrocket. I think batching is a critical skill that not enough business development teams are using.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I talk about time management, going back to that. The biggest problem with it is people say, oh, I'm too busy, I got too much stuff. No, you don't. Shut up. You're just all over the place in what you do.
Right.
The average day in the life of a sales rep is they get up in the morning, there's some of y'all go work out, good for you. But then whatever, you grab your coffee and then you come in at like 8:30 or 8 o'clock, you start checking your fantasy leagues, whatever. And then you make 3, 4, 5 phone calls, and then you get somebody on the phone, they say, send me information. You stop everything you're doing, you
Right.
send this nice custom piece of information. And then when you hit send, you kind of feel like you did something. So you get up, stretch out a little bit, go warm up the coffee. Did you see the game last night? And then you come back, oh shit, I got to send that proposal. Oh, I got to make that phone call. I got to talk to my boss.
Right.
We're literally all over the place. I mean, multitasking, right? There's actually, if you tell me you're a good multitasker, I'm going to tell you you're very inefficient in what you do. Because, there's actually a book called The Myth of Multitasking. It talks about how the brain can't focus on more than one thing at the same time. It can make your body do a bunch of things at the same time, but your brain can't. And what it's doing, it's task switching. But the problem is every time your brain switches a task, it loses time. So the more tasks you do, the more time you lose. So that's why I'm 100% on board with it. I do things in hour chunks, like an hour's worth of this activity, take a break, an hour's worth of that activity, because I can gain momentum in that hour. I can learn something in that hour. Like I always recommend people, if you're going to come up with a contact strategy, like a 5 or 6 touch contact strategy, sit down and come up with that contact strategy all at the same time, as opposed to sending one email and then scheduling an activity 5 days later. And then, you're probably already 30 to 40 activities past due. And then you got to come up with another customized that kind of ties to that first one. It doesn't flow. But if you do it all at the same time and then you map it out,
Right.
Now you can tell a story.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. And John, how do you, kind of, in the vein of kind of bucketing, I'm sure these organizations you work with, you probably get some people that say, hey, yeah, John, I'll help my rep send out 100 emails a day. Whereas other people are, a bit more rational with how you can actually break into accounts. How do you think about kind of putting some strategy and process into place that effectively gets you a little bit of the best of both worlds and make sure your name is in the place, but you're doing so in a value-driven capacity?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that ideal customer profile, right? Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Again, quality, quantity, practice. I think everybody should have a list of top 25. You know what I mean? Like, and those are the ones you follow on all those social listening tools, whatever, and get those alerts. And those are the ones in the 3 types of contact strategies, right? There's a fully tailored one. That's where every single touch is a thoughtful one based on research. And then there's the targeted ones, right? Where it's more based on a persona. And then there's the full template crap that's marketing. I think we as sales reps need to fall between these two, right? Like if you're mid-market and SMB, you're going to be more, in the targeted ones. Mm-hmm. If you're enterprise, you got to be more tailored. But regardless, you can create some efficiencies around this based on what I was saying earlier about the triggers. So for instance, every time somebody goes through a merger and acquisition, you can kind of say the same thing. Like your value proposition to a merger and acquisition can be similar. Every time somebody launches a new product or opens up a new office, you can kind of say the same thing. So you can actually create messaging that can be repurposed. And I don't mean to be blasted out to a million people here. Right. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint. So the way it works is, and the email technique is that I use and I train on from Jeff Hoffman. It's called the why you now. And the why you is the trigger, right? Hey, I saw this happens. And then the why you now is your value proposition to that. So not just your elevator pitch, but literally what value, when somebody goes through a merger and acquisition, what value, what specific component of your solution ties to that? Mm-hmm. That first part, the why you part, has to be customized, about them, show you did your homework, whatever it is. But that why you now part, that the value prop that can be repurposed. So I have, for instance, like I have a template for mergers and acquisitions. I have a template for launching new products. I have a template for growth and opening up new offices. And then I listen for that stuff. Remember I was saying earlier, that's why I standardize on like 4 or 5. So I can have these quote unquote templates in a system and then listen for those triggers. And then when that trigger pops up, I open up that template, scrub it up a little bit, fire it off. And now I've just done some pretty damn high quality prospecting in a really efficient way. And then if you're using some of the tracking tools out there, then you can start to, as a whole group. So if I got 10 reps on my team and we all are using the merger and acquisition template, you can start to find out real fast whether that template actually works. You know what I mean? That messaging works. So every month you kind of do a scrub of, okay, we sent out 50 of these merger and acquisition emails. We got 25 opens and 10 responses. Like that's a pretty damn good, approach. Let's leave that one on there.
Right.
We use this new office one 50 times. We got 10 opens and 1 response. You know what I mean? We probably want to flush that one out.
Yep.
Right. No, so many companies are not doing what you just described, right, John? They
Right.
think, all right, we've teed up our templates, we've teed up our understanding, we have our case studies, but then there's no actual engagement monitoring. What's actually working? And then I really like your concept of once a month, refresh it. Like let's try to get smarter over time, not just try to throw more of the same stuff at the wall and expect it to stick.
Yeah, Brian, what do you recommend or using on that to understand what's actually working and what's not in a tool capacity?
Yeah, I think there's some really accelerating tools that are awesome, right? Like it's progressing fast, so I'm definitely an advocate of it. But there's still so many companies that are just buying tools to check a box and they don't enable any intelligent use of it. So that's where I'd want to start. Like make sure you're actually using human judgment and effort to apply the tool against what it's being designed to use for. Like that doesn't happen all the time. So my team uses something like SalesLoft, right? A great business development tool, because it does exactly what John's describing. It allows you to stay organized, deliver on your word, have some of the right type of preparation already in there, but then it's not just a robot sending out a bunch of communications. The human being has to push those buttons and customize it themselves, right? So it's politely forcing judgment and collaboration. So I like that one for sure. I think that's really helping people to deliver on the word. If someone says, call me next week on Tuesday at 10 a.m., you better call them Tuesday at 10 a.m., right? And you're not going to remember that without a tool to help you stay organized, And then I also love a free tool, not to go too far off what you're showing on the screen, but like feedly.com. Feedly.com, because I just aggregate all the leading thinkers, blogs, different triggers into this one clean dashboard. So every morning I can come in, I can quickly understand what's going on. It's fostering a continuous learning mindset for myself, and then I'm taking what's relevant and what I've learned and sharing it with people with the right context based on your relationship or what you understand. So an aggregator of information that's really relevant to you, like Feedly, that's a mission critical tool for me. Otherwise, it's way too noisy. And then you just get caught in a rabbit hole of just scrolling through a feed and getting distracted by a bunch of stuff that really is just a waste of your mind share. It's not going to help production.
Yeah, I just want to chime in real quick on this. This is one of my biggest pet peeves right here. And I'll try to keep it clean, but man, all these tools like SalesLoft, love SalesLoft, right? Outreach.io, Yesware, ToutApp, SendBloom, like whatever, right? Pick one. I don't really care. But please, what I'm seeing way too much of right now is these are supposed to be sales efficiency tools, right? To help us do our job, but what they're turning into is sales automation tools. And reps are using these tools to put together a cadence of 6 template crap emails,
right? And
then they just go play and then just go, and they're always like one maybe decent message, and then it's like, hey, did you get my first one? Bubbling this one up to the top, just want to make sure you got. And then the inevitable breakup email of, hey, 1, 2, or 3, you're really interested, you're just super busy right now, or you're not interested and you want me to take you out, or 3, you're stuck under a rock and you want me to call the police, or something stupid, the alligator email or something like that. It's driving me batshit crazy.
Yeah.
It literally, I do not understand why sales reps are cranking out those type of template emails, because, and I've said this before, if I was a VP of sales right now, I would walk into a new organization that had, say they had a huge SDR population. The first thing I would do as a new VP of sales, I'd walk in and I'd say, let me see all the emails that are going out by the SDRs. And if they were literally all template emails being cranked out through one of these tools, I would say, you know what, I'm going to save this company a whole bunch of money right now. I'm going to fire every SDR on the team, and I'm going to go get somebody to optimize, like an operations person, to optimize Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot, pick a marketing automation tool. And I'm going to do it better than they will. Because with the marketing automation tools, I'm actually going to analyze the results and I'm going to make the tweaks, where sales reps almost never analyze the results using any of these tools.
Right.
So I love these tools, but as Brian said, you got to put some flavor on top of it. I quote this all the time from Gary Vaynerchuk. He says, look, everybody talks about content is king. Content is king. He said, fine, if content is king, then context is God. And that to me is sales versus marketing. Marketing is content, sales is context. If we as sales professionals are not putting any context around our content, we are no different than marketing, and I have no idea why we're getting paid to do what we do. And Brian, you could chime in on this from a social standpoint too. It drives me crazy, for instance, when somebody just retweets a 39-page ebook. It's like, you know how many 39-page ebooks I have in my things to read folder that I've never looked at in my life? But if you put your context around that, and that's where you can start to build that thought leadership. People look at you as somebody that's like, oh, look, this kid has an opinion, right? That's why, the Hootsuite of the world who are good tools, but again, use it as Autobots where they just connect everybody and tweet out something that marketing puts out there. There's absolutely no reason for that, and it kills our credibility in sales.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I sorry, Ben, just a quick thought. And it's not just email or social, it's everything, right?
Everything.
So when you show up in person for a meeting, do your research. Bring some intelligence and some insight to the conversation. We use the concept, we think about, don't send a naked message. Like, actually put some thought into what you're bringing to market. And a lot of people, I agree that you have to be visible, right? You need to share content to have some awareness. But not enough people are talking about the one-to-one communication. How can you really be much more relevant for that specific audience? I couldn't agree more, John, that with connecting the dots, with wrapping that context on top of it. Because we've got access to information like never before, but it's still, you got to filter it down. You got to save the buyer time so that it's much more pointed and relevant for them. And I think that's something that's really, really key. So I know we're almost out of time here, gentlemen. Thanks for your insights. We're a little bit over. I saw a few questions come in. I think we addressed them actually as we went through it. So if you have any questions after, feel free to reach out with us. John, Ben, any last remarks from your side?
None from mine. That was a hell of a closing argument on both your part there.
Yeah. I mean, that the same thing. Just stop it. Like, I would just ask everybody paying attention, you just don't be a robot. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to get replaced here real quick if you don't think about what you're doing. Put some context around it, do some research, educate yourself, have a reason to reach out to people, give this profession the respect that it deserves, and give also the clients the respect that they deserve, by doing some homework before you reach out to them. That's it.
Right. Completely agree. John, Ben, thanks so much for joining. Pleasure chatting. We'll connect again soon. Have a fantastic day. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Have fun.
Later.